Welcome to Podcast of All Podcasts. Enjoy best moments of podcast history.
Otis Redding, sitting on the dock of the bay.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, and then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh, I'm just sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home in Georgia, headed for the Frisco Bay, 'cause I've had nothing to live for, and look like nothing's gonna come my way. So I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. Look like nothing's gonna change, everything still remains the same. I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I'll remain the same. Listen, sitting here resting my bones, and this loneliness won't leave me alone. Listen, 2,000 miles I roam just to make this dock my home. Now I'm just gonna sit at the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time.
Chris Hardwick with Mike Judge.
But it was, it was the internet before the internet. But I also think there's I was thinking about this today, that when you have to go out of your way to consume something, like now, if there was if you just started now and you put, Milton or Beavis and Butthead or Inbred Jed or whatever on YouTube, it's very possible that it would still get a following. But people just, I think, because content is so disposable now and people don't have to exert any effort to get it. But there was so much value in making the decision to leave our houses, go to the theater, experience something new and different that no one else could see anywhere, know that it was special, know that we were in on something that felt private but communal. It had such tremendous value, and we went back as many times as we could to watch the same festival over and over again, and then, every so often when it would come through town, there was so much value in the fact that we had to actively consume it as opposed to what I think a lot of people do now is passively consume, where they just don't necessarily, it's like, we're spoiled now with convenience and entertainment.
I know I sit there on YouTube all day myself, but I do miss it. Like, I used to go to there was another festival besides that it was called the Animation Celebration that would play in Dallas, and I would go every time. And also there was something pretty cool that seeing that stuff on a big screen projected, like cell animation shot on film projected, is just amazing. I just think it looks incredible, or stop motion, and you don't get that, on YouTube. But still, it's the other problem with YouTube is that first Office Space Milton short I did, which I did the lip sync with a stopwatch, which I may be the only person who's ever done this that I know of. Like, timed every syllable on exposure sheets and that's all talking, that whole thing. And so it's pretty meticulous work. I got it. I nailed it. It all was there. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I can't believe I got this to work. And now it's on YouTube for everyone to see out of sync. Like it's like a second off. Just like for all my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, it's like all that work. A few people saw it was on SNL correctly, and now it's on YouTube out of sync. Great.
So was it the Spike and Mike festivals that sort of did that kind of launch everything? Did that connect you to MTV and?
Actually, not. It all kind of happened at once. Like Spike and Mike ran this one of the first ones I did before Beavis and Butthead, and then I actually sent them a storyboard for Frog Baseball, and they weren't interested. And then I did. They had some other thing. I did another one. I did two more, and then I just told them I'm going to make this anyway. And so then he said, okay, well then I'll pay you to license it. But around that time I was just getting like Comedy Central was interested in doing the Milton stuff, and then I had Liquid Television. There was a show called Liquid Television.
MTV.
Yeah, so
How are they finding it though?
I just mailed it to them.
Oh, you just sent it to them.
I was sending out VHS tapes. I was literally I called information and just MTV, and I just called around and bugged people until someone would give me an address. But actually, Liquid Television had an ad in Animation Magazine saying send stuff, so I just sent it to them, a tape of my stuff. So yeah, it was really just sending out tapes, and I think probably people in entertainment would get tons of tapes of people doing whatever scripts, but mine actually I had a crazy drawing of a character I called Inbred Jed on the side of the VHS, and I think it said homemade cartoons. I think I had a feeling that would they don't get a lot of homemade cartoons, and I thought that would get attention, and it did. I mean, I got within my first mailing out 15 tapes. Within a couple weeks, I was getting all these calls. So yeah, I kept thinking, why did I go to college, get a physics degree? I could work as an engineer. I should have just done this when I was 17. And
were you able to apply any of the things you learned in engineering to?
Some of the misery of working in cubicles I used for material later.
You know what's really interesting to me about it, everything you do kind of it puts a very specific subculture under a microscope, whether it's an office environment or whether it's like a TGI Fridays or even sort of the dumbing down of America and kind of douche culture, or these little Hesher kids or rednecks. I mean, I still for years, Will and I would quote, we would do the Inbred Jed. You would start, and he would be laughing in the thing and the cackling.
Oh, you saw that?
Yeah, and then play some Skinnerd, and then when the guy spits at his girlfriend, he spits and it just hits her on it just kind of catches her on the side. He spits the chew out. I mean, it's we quoted that stuff for ages, but there's something you're able to zero in on some really amazingly authentic piece of the subculture, and maybe engineering, or maybe understanding code or figuring out. I mean, it's almost like you're coding culture in a weird sort of way.
That could be. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess that's just the stuff I'm drawn to. I don't. I also, my other career was I was a musician and toured all over the country, and I think you sort of, when you're playing in a lot of different towns, you start to see how there are these kind of archetypes, and that it's like, oh, it's that guy in the bar who's like that, or it's that, there's a lot of things are kind of the same everywhere.
It's kind of funny
in a lot of ways.
It's kind of funny that there are consistencies from seemingly unrelated regions.
Right, yeah. And I think even King of the Hill's set in Texas, but I think, you can be in Michigan and there's guys standing around staring at a truck engine, drinking beer, and and Anywhere where there are white people and engines and lawnmowers.
We just like to stand near them to celebrate the fact that we've mastered the machine.
Exactly.
But I would imagine when so Beavis and Butthead, I assume, spun out of Liquid Television. Did Liquid Television start the conversation for the series?
Yeah,
Or I'm sure MTV was like, "Here's $5."
Yeah. Oh, it went through different levels of people trying to rip me off. It started with Liquid Television, who I guess I kind of found this out later. They had the right they had the first right to negotiate with any of the things that they had licensed, I guess. So I was getting all these weird cryptic calls from Liquid Television people. There was this guy he was this British guy who was very kind of insulting to me. Like he was saying, like, he'd say, MTV wants to buy these characters, believe it or not. So, and he was.
Was that last part necessary, sir?
Yeah, he insulted me, and then he kind of and then tried to rip me off. He sent me this contract that was just, and I said, okay, I'm interested in doing something with MTV for sure. And he sends me this contract, and I called him and I said, well, obviously I can't sign this. This is they would own everything for the right. They would own everything, and they would pay me something like $4,000 to do 2 more 2-minute shorts, which they would, at the time, doing everything myself, doing a 2-minute short would take me 8 weeks. So that was a lot of work for $2,000 each.
Right.
And anyway, so I just said, I can't do this. And then he was like, well, I thought we had an agreement. And then, so I blew them off. And then what happened, that guy, so then it was just over. And but what MTV was doing, I guess if they waited a certain amount of time, then they could call me directly. So then they started calling me directly, and then there was that level of horrible contracts. Well, I guess you've experienced that.
But I did, but I only experienced it as a host. I didn't create any IP that changed our culture. So I feel like you probably got a way shorter end of the deal than I. I don't know.
Yeah, I did. I mean, what happened though was they had this. I guess the next thing I didn't know they even wanted to do a show. They were always very cryptic. I thought they were just going to do those animated IDs, and I'd already done a little bumper for the VMAs, the Video Music Awards. So I did a deal with them where they bought the characters for not a whole lot of money, but also I knew what was I going to do by myself? I was, like I said, it'd take me 8 minutes to do a couple of these, and I thought, maybe I'll do one more, and then. That's it. I don't have that many ideas for Beavis and Butthead. That's what I thought. But then they bought it, and then they said we're going to make a show. But then they needed me to do the show. It was all very weird, and that's why the show was really spotty the first season. They didn't know what they were doing. I didn't realize that I was in charge right away. It was all very odd. But their lawyer had all the she had all the bad intentions of a good lawyer, but she wasn't very good she had left some big holes in the contract, and there was so later on I was able to renegotiate. And I remember at one point I found out that I was making more money than Tabitha Soren, so I said, okay, that's fair.
That was a big... Oh my God. Yeah, because you had MTV was such this strange, this weird wasteland of I don't know, there's not really any rules, because this was, that type of cable model.
The great Chuck Jones. I picked this because he's just hilarious.
If you had a couple of those, 2 of those, particularly of Mickey Mouse, if one of those black and white Mickey Mouses recently sold at auction in New York for $175,000, and they were washing them off too. It's ridiculous, but it's just a question of nobody thought to save any of them, and why should they? They weren't worth anything. So that was my first job, was washing that off, and then I moved up to become a painter, and that was to put the color, or black and white, some color. And then I went up to become an inking, which takes the animator's drawings and traces them onto the celluloid. And then I became what they call an in-betweener, which is the guy that does the drawing between the drawings that the animator makes. That was 1933. I went to work for Leon Schlesinger, and that's where I stayed for 30 years. And Leon had formed a company called Pacific Art and Title, and to this day that company exists and does a lot of the title work for various studios, an independent studio. Leon he looked very much like an old-fashioned song and dance man, but he was a little old for that thing. He was the kind of guy that wore pointy toes, as we say, pointy. Well, but fortunately, he was very lazy, and all he knew was that he made pictures that Warner Brothers would bought. Somewhere in the line, he was an in-law. I think he was married to one of the Warner's sisters or something. I don't know. Anyway, there was a familial relationship there of some kind, and he made pictures and sold them to Warner Brothers, and he didn't care as long as they bought them. That was fine. Well, Leon Schlesinger was very lazy, and that stood to our advantage because he didn't hang over us or anything. He spent as little time in the studio as he could. He'd come back and ask us what we were working on, and we knew he wasn't going to listen no matter what we said. So we would say something like, well, we're working on this picture with Daffy Duck, and it turns out that Daffy isn't a duck at all. He's a transvestite chicken. And he would say, that's the boy. He's put in lots of jokes. He had a little lisp, and I moved to the wraiths. And so he'd go charging out. And if you don't know what a wraith is, it's where horses run. And so one day when he went out, Tex was directing. I was animating at that time, and Bob Clampett was animating too. And Cal Howard, one of our writers, said to Tex, he said, you know, that voice of Leon's would make a good voice for Daffy Duck. So he called in Mel Blanc and went over, and he said, can you do Leon Schlesinger's voice? And Mel said, oh, sure, I can do, it's very simple. I mean, and he said, how much do you want me to do? And he said, okay, so they recorded all the voices and everything. The one thing we forgot, though, before the picture was halfway into work, was that Leon was going to have to see that picture. It was worse, he was going to hear it, and he'd hear his own voice coming out of that duck. I expected to be fired. In fact, we all wrote our resignations, that all of us had worked on the film. We figured the director and the animators would be canned. So we all wrote this, figured we'd resign before we got fired. Fortunately, we didn't send them in, because Leon came crashing in that day, as he usually did, and he assembled all the troops to watch the picture. So Leon jumped up on his platform, and in order to make us feel good, he said, roll the garbage. And that was what he always said, It made you feel like he really cared. And so they rolled the garbage, and of course everybody in the studio knew that the drama of the situation. So nobody laughed, of course, but he didn't care. He never paid attention to what anybody else did anyway, or heard, and it was only his opinion that counted. So at the end of the picture, there was this deathly silence, and you could hear crickets, and a horse neighing like they do in westerns, and way off in the distance, a dog bewailing our death, and but Leon jumped up and looked around, and glared around, and we thought, boy, here comes the old axe. And he says, Jesus Christ, that's a funny voice. Where'd you get that voice? And so that was what it was. And he went to his unjust deserts, doubtless taking his money with him. Went to Nineveh and Tyre, but the voice lives on as long as Daffy Duck's alive. Why Leon Schlesinger is there in his corner of heaven. Well, it was a cat by the unlikely name of Johnson, the only cat I've ever known who had a last name per first name. I don't know whether it was first name or his last name, but we were living in Newport Beach, California, and in a house, and this was around 1918. I was 6 years old, and my brother and I saw this cat came to visit us and take up residence, rather, as cats do. And it was early in the morning, and he came strolling over the sand dunes, and he was a cat that walked like this, like a prize fighter. You expect him to pull his pants up like a prize fighter does, and go like this. And he came over, and he was he had scar tissue over his chest, and one ear was slightly bent, and he had a tarry piece of string around his neck, and a little, like we didn't use them those days, a tongue depressor, an old tongue depressor, and on it in lavender ink it said Johnson. We didn't, in rather crude lettering, and we didn't know that he was, whether that was his blood type or his name or his former owner's name or anything, but so we called him Johnson. He answered to that as well as anything else. But of course, like most cats, he doesn't answer to anything. I mean, he answered to food. That's what he answered to. How much do you want me to tell you about Johnson?
Well, it's a very important story.
It's important to me because it established once and for all in my mind that every cat is different than other cats. Anyway, he came to live with us, and he turned out to be a rather spectacularly different cat. He came up to my mother, and she was finishing breakfast, and she figured he wanted something to eat. And so we'd already explained that he probably was going to stay with us a while. And so she offered him a piece of bacon and a piece of egg white and a piece of toast and so on, all of which he spurned. He obviously had nothing like that in mind. And finally, in a little spurt of whimsy, which was typical of my mother, she gave him a half a grapefruit that still had quite a bit of grapefruit in it. And it electrified him. It was like he'd taken a hypodermic. And he grabbed at that thing and he went at it suddenly there was this flash of a tortoiseshell cat whirling around with this thing, and then he came sliding out of it, and the thing slowly came to a stop. But it was completely cleared out. He cleared out the whole thing, and we looked at him in astonishment. So there must have been some juice that goes through cats that was lacking in old Johnson, because he loved grapefruit more than anything else in the whole world. He'd eat it until all the inside was gone, and sometimes he'd eat it in such a way that he ended up wearing a little space helmet, which is really the whole grapefruit, with a flap hanging down on one side like a batter's helmet. He was quite a cat, but when he had it on, he seemed to like it, and that was long before anybody ever heard of space helmets. And then sometimes he'd walk out on the beach with this thing on his head, and until it really bothered him, then he'd kick it off. But then the second thing that really amazed us, and I've never heard of a cat like that before, but he was a very congenial cat. He liked to be with people, and particularly with young people. He was very fond of children. I was the middle child. I mean, I was 6 years old. My brother's 4, and my sisters are 8 and 10. Well, when we went swimming, and we'd all learned to swim early. One day we were swimming, and we looked around, and here was Johnson out there swimming with us. And I don't know, cats, I don't know if you've ever seen a cat swim or not. They can swim. They can swim very well, but they don't like it, or they don't seem to like it at any rate. He did. I think he really did. But only this much of him shows. He looks like a very pug-nosed alligator with hair, and his eyes are showing above the water, and for some reason they grimace like this, and his teeth are hanging down, and most of them is underwater, but behind is all the oil has come off their fur and trails behind them, and maybe a few seagull feathers and stuff, and then when he got tired out there, he would come and put his arms up on one of our shoulders and sort of hang there for a while, and you look around, here's this thing. Well, it was all right as long as one of the people in the family. But unfortunately, it wasn't always, because if he couldn't find one of us, he'd approach a stranger, and people would come out of the surf there, with these, their face going like this, and you knew that they'd had a social encounter with old Johnson out there. But they always looked pretty disturbed. At any rate, the great moment for Johnson came one time when he had eaten his grapefruit, and it stuck on his head, and he came out and strolled down the beach. We were up on the porch of our house, 2-story house, looking down on the sand. And he started off toward the pier, and it happened that the Young Women's Christian Association were having a picnic there. Well, not only did he have his helmet on, but somewhere along the line he had found parts of a dead seagull, and it had left a few feathers on his shoulders. So he was quite a sight. So he strolled down to where these girls were having a picnic. And they took one look at this thing. like this with the feathers and the whole business. And so they all screamed and jumped up and ran into the ocean. Well, that was a technical mistake because of course, Johnson, being a gregarious sort, decided he would join. Maybe he wanted to join the group, I don't know, or maybe he was going to appeal to the Supreme Court, that male cats weren't allowed in the Girl Scouts or whatever it was. And so he went in after them, and they left in various states of undress. Not in dress, I mean, their minds were boggled. And I never saw so many girls that were so boggled. And they never came back to Balboa, not Newport Beach. The basic thing about Johnson was that, as I say, you cannot take anything for granted.
Trey Parker, Matt Stone, with Larry Divney.
He said what he felt most positively about your show is that it's evocative and people talk about it afterwards. And he said that's all he ever hoped for with his programs, and that's the highest praise.
Oh, yeah, no, it was really, and it coming from him because we were definitely influenced by him as well. And when we saw, we grew up sort of more with sitcoms like Different Strokes and Hello Larry and Facts of Life. That was supposed to be our comedy, and so it wasn't until a little bit later that we saw syndicated runs of All in the Family, and we were really like, wow, this was what happened to this stuff, because it just went away when everything got so PC in the 80s, and you could never have had an Archie Bunker again. And it was really when we started talking about how could you bring an Archie Bunker back. What if you made him a little 8-year-old fat kid that really influenced one of our characters, Cartman, in the show, was based on Archie Bunker.
And I understand Monty Python was something you did watch that warped you early?
Yeah, huge influence.
Monty Python, because, as Trey said, all the comedy we grew up with was just so milquetoast and just the same. And it was on PBS. They showed Flying Circus on PBS, I think it was Wednesdays or Thursday nights. And I remember setting up a TV in my room just to watch that. And I really don't think we understood we obviously didn't understand a lot of the jokes or a lot of what was going on, but it was just what is this? This is new. This makes me
And as a kid, you're intrigued by it. You don't want to be given this, sitcom kind of, like today's sitcoms that's just sort of ring the bell humor and everything's so the same. Kids want to be have this sense of discovery of I don't understand what's going on here and I want to know what's going on. And that's, watching Python at ages 5 and 6 was, in fact, I thought that the way they talked that way because it was funny, not because there was an actual place that they came from. And I finally realized that there was this country that, they talk like that. I figured it out about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Now, Larry, I have to ask, are these guys a blessing or a curse?
They're both. And it's a balance. They're not a curse at all. I mean, when I first was exposed to South Park, which was the spirit of Christmas, the 6-minute tape, I was tearing. I was laughing so hard. I thought it was the funniest thing I've ever seen, and turned to Doug Herzog, who was the president at the time, and said, you can't air this. And he says, you never know.
So just for those who haven't seen it, can you describe the spirit of Christmas?
Well, the spirit, maybe you guys should describe it better, but the spirit of Christmas is Santa and Jesus basically duking it out. And it's a lot deeper than that, but it was the most irreverent, the funniest, groundbreaking use of language and characters in a setting that you've just never seen before. And I thought it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And then when we finally put it on the air, we had advertisers, which is, initially we go around a lot, who wouldn't go near it. But for everyone who wouldn't go near it, there were 2 who would, and it was a huge success for us. It was kind of like the uranium for the network in many ways, because Comedy Central always looked to do groundbreaking things, and we had always, try to break the mold. We do not like to run sitcoms. It's a network where we try to do something different. Even Ben Stein's Money was a new take on game shows. Every format we did was a new take on that format. Usually, this was brand new in its format and its expression and its politic, and it was funny. And it's funny. And the common denominator for us, if it's funny, it works. And it did extremely, extremely well. As we went forward with it, there were issues sometimes about what I would let them say and what they wanted to say, and mutually we were able to work every one of them out. Well, you give them a lot of latitude.
We want to talk about some of those, but I'm curious, in a PC environment, you've done Spirit of Christmas, and Hollywood's talking about it, and sounds like a short leap to finding a home that would embrace you. Was it that easy?
No, and in fact, the biggest thing was the same kind of and we even questioned the same way Larry did, when people were like, we got to make this into a show, because the short actually had the kind of language that the South Park movie had. I mean, it was very, very hardcore. And And a lot of people said, well, this is really funny, but you'll never get this on TV. But we knew...
Or it won't work without...
It won't work
be
without
funny
that...
without that language.
Without
That's the only thing
going
that makes
that
it funny.
far. But we knew, you know, it's really all about limitations. We knew that as long as we're on television, we're pushing the television edge, it's okay. Which was why when we made a movie, we knew, okay, now we got to take it times 6, because now we're pushing a movie edge. If we'd only done South Park the way it's on TV for a movie, no one would have said, wow, this is really cutting edge, you know. And so we had the same, you know, we had the same thoughts going into it as, you know, we were questioning it too, but we just knew there was something else there. There was also just the eye candy factor of it. People just liked how it looked, you know, which was an interesting thing. But we got courted by a few places that wanted to do the pilot, you know, and the thing, we just based it on, Comedy Central had the shows on that we watched, which was, they were running Monty Python, they were running Absolutely Fabulous, they were, you know, running Kids in the Hall, and it was the kind of comedy, the only kind of comedy that we were really into, and we knew, you know, we didn't want to take it to MTV and have it become a kid's show, which is, you know, all MTV really is anymore is Nickelodeon, and so, you know, it really wasn't a hard decision, you know, we knew that's, because they were airing the Pythons that still had that kind of material that was, you know, just as edgy as anything we've ever done, if not edgier.
There was a moment when you were ushered into a room, I'm sure, to watch the pilot. What was your gut reaction when you first saw it?
Brilliant. I thought it was funny, and to me, you know, funny is really the common denominator. You know, you can do a lot of shows that have expression, but bottom line, it has to be funny. Not only was it funny, you know, it was so unique and groundbreaking, provocative. You know, all the things that are in our quote mission statement. You know, for the network, unique point of view, intelligent, and very, very funny, and we looked and immediately knew that we had a hit on our hands. I mean, there was no mistake about it.
But what's fascinating is we went through a phase of, because then what happened was that and I don't remember what sort of branch it was, but they decided they had to do a focus group.
Focus
on
groups.
It, you know, which
I didn't know that.
We cannot stand the whole idea. And in fact, when we made the South Park movie, we told Paramount part of our deal is we do not focus group this movie, and they were like, what do you mean? It's the greatest tool and blah, 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 blah.
No, but a lot of producers and directors like it. Wouldn't you want to focus group it and find out what people want?
And we don't, because somehow it takes sort of the zen of the whole thing away when you're just counting laughs, you know. And so, anyway, they focus grouped it, and it did not. It tested very poorly.
Really poorly with women. Really poorly with women.
Well,
that's what I remember.
And so we had to call. And so Debbie Liebling, the executive at Comedy Central, had to call us and say, guys, you know, it didn't test very well, and so maybe we're not gonna pick up the show. It was really, because we were supposed to go right away. We're not gonna pick up the show, but we want to keep working on it. And so Matt and I and Brian Graydon, who we were producing it with, got T-shirts with a big check minus on it. And we walked into this meeting with check minus shirts on, like, guys, you didn't get a check minus. We all got a check minus.
Yeah, like that was supposed to make us feel better.
Like,
we all got a check minus.
And so what happened was, so
your
basically,
focus group got a check minus.
But you know, we had sort of been in Hollywood for about 3 years at that time, doing things, and so we kind of said, well, here's another one that's just, you know, not going to work. And so we had an opportunity to go make this movie Orgasmo that we got the money for. So we're like, okay, we're going to go make this movie. And they're like, well, what? You can't do that. And then finally, a couple months later, they said, you know what, maybe we will write another script and we'll see. And we ended up writing the Kathy Lee episode, which became another episode. We wrote that, and then, you know, but it was all, again, if it had been based purely on focus groups and that kind of thing, it would have never been on the air.
There are people who would find it hard to believe that Comedy Central actually has somebody who controls content, that there are censors at Comedy Central, because you do push the envelope a bit. Who has that job, and what do they do for a living?
We have a woman by the name of Renee Presser, who has many titles, depending on who's defining her. And she works in our legal department. And there's a couple of issues. You know, we have a standards and practices department, and it's basically to work with the talent. And we don't have a scripted policy of what is right and wrong. Certainly language is the biggest concern we have. And the advertisers are, and these guys know this because we debate about this quite a bit, the advertisers are very cautious to be in certain content. And language is the biggest one that, strangely enough, it's very hypocritical at times when you look at some of the content that they do support, like in daytime soap operas and so forth. You know, they talk about, well, I can't be in South Park, which is, you know, so much smarter than anything else that they're in. So we have to, it's an economic balance that we have to maintain, and the standards and practices people really, that's not their concern. Their concern is, what is this show from an expression standpoint, how is it going to appeal to the viewer? And at the same time, if there is what they think is an advertiser's concern, they'll bring it up to the advertising department. And then sometimes we get into some fights about that.
Sometimes
like as we speak.
Like right now, like right after this.
It's not a fist fight usually, although we may get to that eventually. We don't know.
It might get to that with the ad sales guy.
Could we get some fresh blood on the floor here right now?
Sure, absolutely. We have one on right now that they're writing for next week, and we can talk about it, I suppose. Which is, there's a spoof on the Subway sandwich thing that was done.
With Jared.
With Jared.
And stupid commercials.
And
Jared in them.
We get the heads up, so we tell the ad sales guys, and the ad sales guy came and said they cannot do that episode. They just cannot do it. And I said, well, it's probably down the line. There won't be a problem. Of course, I find out it's next week's episode, which is usually the case. See, they corner us a little bit that way. There's no chance to move.
But see, this is to me,
this is a good
the
one.
scariest thing. Honestly, the scariest thing, because here we have in this. We love USA. We love to talk about our freedom of speech. We love to talk about it and what a free country we are. Here we are. And we cannot put a show on the air that we want on the air because of a sandwich company, right? And you've got this big corporation who is dictating what people are going to see and not see, and they don't want people to think badly of their Subway, Subway sandwiches. So this, we can't go on the air saying Subway sandwiches, which to me
Well,
is...
you know what? See, we're indicting them. It's really us who are not letting them do it. We haven't even told Subway about this.
Right. They're just assuming
We're
Subway's going to
assuming
freak
this is
out.
a dynamic, right? Now, at the same time, Subway cannot tell us what kind of content we should do in South Park. They don't have to advertise on that show if they don't want to. We talked about this yesterday. I talked to the sales guys about it. We are actually going to go to them. We think they should advertise on it. We think that would be the coolest thing to do. And whether they do or not, probably not.
Well, it's one thing. It's also one thing if Subway was an advertiser on South Park and we were doing a show where we were making fun of...
James L. Brooks.
I always loved writing, but never considered that I could do it professionally.
So how did it work out then that you ended up doing it professionally to begin with, at the beginning?
I always wrote. I was lucky enough to get a job at CBS, though not a college graduate, and certainly not an Ivy graduate. That usually went to Ivy graduates as sort of like, a stepping stone job. I was an usher there as well, and then I was a copy boy, and all these through fortunate breaks, and that led to me becoming a news writer. So I was doing some writing professionally, and that led to documentaries, and in each case, and then that finally led to being out of work and trying a spec script for television.
It doesn't seem like there was a ton of time between when you first started and when you had this first hit, Mary Tyler Moore.
Gee, I don't know that there was a hunk of time, if not a ton, and it's, television is a very friendly environment, and certainly a writer's environment, and I guess actually I'd been doing it for, I guess I was freelance writing for 2 or 3 years, and I got to do a pilot, and that pilot went on the air. It was Room 222, and things followed after that.
And is it fair to say that the first one that really hit was Mary Tyler Moore Show?
Well, it depends what you mean by really.
In your estimation.
The really started with selling a script. I really sold a script was a pretty big deal. So they were all very big deals to me.
Right. You did something that I guess is not terribly common, which is that after achieving then great success in film, you came back to TV, and I just wonder how that ended up happening. A lot of people sort of look at film as the more ultimate destination rather than TV.
I don't think that's true anymore.
Okay.
It was very much true. It was very much true when I was in TV. There was not only was it true, there was a tremendous prejudice against hiring anybody connected with TV for a movie. It was, that was the environment then. There were, even on different sides of the lot, different executives. People didn't mix it. It was considered a lower form, even though we were having more fun. And it was very much where the cliche was the inmates running the asylum, and in terms of writers running shows, it was that way. Work with great actors in television, and then I think there are very few people who made it over the wall first. I think Ron Howard did, and then it was a trickle, and then it was non-existent. And now we've reached the point where, I guess I was going to say all, but it's, if not all, virtually all first-rate dramas in television. And for a while, movies didn't do comedy. It's hard to believe. So all comedy was in television, and now it's cross-pollinated like crazy.
But if you were to go back to, I guess it would be right after maybe broadcast news, and that time where you were pondering what the next step was it a conscious thing, about a conscious thought, let's do some more television?
There's such different forms. I mean, television is communal, more fun, less on the line. Once you're doing, and if you're doing a series, once it works, you're left to yourself. You just get to do it. You have to do it. You get to do it, and I always think a successful television series is the best job, on a lot of things, because it gives you community. It doesn't demand temporary insanity the way movies do. You can be almost a normal person.
When you and Matt Groening first crossed paths, can you share that story of how you were first even aware of him?
I came to 20th Century Fox to do movies, and then they started a network, and they asked me to do a show as part of their starting what became the Fox network. And this was a time when 20th Century Fox was in shaky financial trouble, when the network took a while. I think they were sort of on the verge of going under several times. And in that environment, somebody made me aware of Tracy Ullman, and we did a sort of loose, crazy, nobody was watching it, with this wildly talented woman on television. And we thought that, these bumpers you have before you go to commercial, that we'd make them little entertainment pieces. And we do these 30-second animated pieces. And I knew of Matt Groening's Life in Hell, and I asked him to come in and do one, and it was just for the network nobody ever heard of, for this thing that very few people would watch. And he came in and sat in the building we're in now, and in the outer office, as a bolt from God, sort of drew what became of The Simpsons.
Wow. And I think it's just noteworthy that through Terms of Endearment that he first crossed your radar anyway, is that right?
Yeah. Somebody had given me, after I did Terms of Endearment, which was the first movie I directed, a panel of Matt Groening's, the original art, of a Life in Hell that he had done, with 12 Ways to Die in Los Angeles. And it was great. It was, drive-bys, freeway shootings, and the last two were You Can Die of Failure and Success. And I had that hanging up. I still have it. Right. Faded, you can barely see what's there, and I still have it. And then Sam Simon, who I had worked with on Taxi, and we had worked together on regular, traditional half-hour shows that we really enjoyed. So then the three of us sat down and tried to figure out how to do The Simpsons as a series.
So Life as Hell was not an option, though, for the beginning, for that short.
No. Matt wanted to protect that, and his protection against that was to draw something hurriedly in the outer office, which was pretty close to what The Simpsons looked like.
Wow. And for someone who's been living under a rock for the last 26 years, what is The Simpsons about? Who are The Simpsons, and what is this series about?
I can't do it. But I'll tell you this: they're the most user-friendly characters to have to work with from a writing point of view, and from an animator's point of view, I think, as well. And you can do whatever comedy you want with them. You can do an emotional comedy. You can do satire. You can do parody. You can be broad. You can be emotional. You can do romantic comedy. They will travel with you. So anything that goes wrong is your fault, not theirs.
What even inspired the desire to make a feature and now to make a short?
We resisted a feature for a long time. And then the resistance ended, and we did it. And our own resistance to it, and we did it. But the short was just like people getting together to play jazz or something. It was, let's do it in the simplest way possible. We from the moment of saying let's do it to having the outline for what we do was shockingly fast. Sort of notions of what we're going to try to do happened very quickly, and it was as close to pure fun. It's almost criminal to say that, but it was So it was refreshing. It was great for us. I mean, we all enjoyed it. And the only thing I can compare it to, though I don't play anything, is if 5 guys who play instrument got together in a room.
So for both the feature and the short, you entrusted the direction to David Silverman, and I wonder if you can...
I entrust children to him. I didn't trust anything to David Silverman. He was the one who I think is as responsible for The Simpsons being a series as anyone, because he accosted me drunk on a Christmas party, office Christmas party long ago, and just spilled out passionately how there hadn't been an animated series on television for a quarter century at that time, and how much it would mean to animators to have a series out there with animation. And I was really impressed. And I think that moment led to doing the series as much as anything.
Wow. What gave you the reason to believe that it was actually doable when it hadn't been done for so long?
Well, first of all, we had the shorts, the magical shorts that Matt did on our television show. And then when we did it, we decided to do it at the time. It changed a lot since then, with very rigid rules of believability and all the rules that we had followed. In, like I said, Sam and I had worked on, I think, several situation comedies before, or character comedies primarily, the way we did it. And we decided to hold the same rules, the same believability rules. And what the life of The Simpsons has been like, and I think what's helped us so much, is every once in a while we'll throw a rule overboard and we'll no longer have that rule. If anybody said we're going to put The Simpsons in space and have creatures from space, I mean, we would have, we'd have tarred and feathered them.
In what ways has the show most markedly changed since the beginning?
At the beginning, Bart was the overriding star. His behavior had never been seen before. He was front and center, and shows revolved around him, and that's changed. I think it's Homer more than anybody else now.
Wow. And is it particularly challenging? I mean, a lot of live action shows choose the advantage of a live audience or a laugh track. You guys have to be genuinely funny.
We have a table read for every show, and the table read has the large group that does the show, but also we have visitors, maybe as many as 50 or 60 of them sitting around this large table. So we have the test of whether people laugh or not.
The animation, it seems to have also evolved.
Yeah.
How would you say that's happened?
Duncan Trussell with Dan Harmon. Bye, God. Mr. Pickles.
Outraged over or not understand the context of it being a joke. Hey, remember when jokes were, we all sort of had the social agreement that jokes were jokes. Remember that? Remember when they were in the frame of, hey, this is a joke.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm gonna play this out in my life. Doesn't mean that this is the content of my character. I just have a dark sense of humor, and here's a joke. Nowadays, you can't do that at all. So it's like I've been effectively like, all right, I just feel not that I need to fucking spout my little bullshit through a digital bullhorn, but like I definitely don't feel comfortable. Like an idea will come into my head or a thought, and I'm just like, oh, I should. No, wait, no, never mind. I'm not gonna say shit.
Well, because the idea was like, there was a feeling that was more like kind of like playground or something, where we're just like playing games here. We're like fucking around, man. Like it's just like we're making stuff. Oh, look, there's mud. Let's run over here. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Frank fell and skinned his knee. Oh hell, let's go over here. Climb that wall. What's that?
Yep.
It was fun. Nothing meant anything. It was a game. There wasn't a sense of like, if I make this joke, it is an indication that I am connected to a dark cobble of evil humans.
Yeah.
And I'm basically like a swamp bubble coming out of like some infinite hive of doom people. I was just saying some shit that in the moment seemed funny. Also, I was kind of hammered when I said it.
Yeah.
And it seemed funny then, but none of it, I promise you, I'm not killing. There's no fucking like hostile, situation under my house where I'm like getting to tourists and like flaying them.
Yeah.
It was just a joke. But now these days have changed a little bit. And what's really fucked up about it is that when you start like hearing about these Russian bot or troll farms.
Oh, dude. And then you don't know what's real and what's fake. And that asshole that said the thing that bummed you out, is that just somebody being paid by a...
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so that's where kind of where we've hit this, like, I think of hopefully a point right now, a wobbly point in our interconnectivity through technology. We just have to deal with the fact that the immune system of the technology isn't strong enough to withstand outside influences. So basically, like, it's like having a house, your Twitter account or whatever the account is, it's like having a house with 1 billion doors. And you can't shut all the doors, and you don't, and there's no...
And some of them don't even have actual doors. They're just openings. You know what I mean? Just like
totally.
big, beautiful arches.
Yeah, man.
Like the Flintstones house. Remember that? They just had holes for windows. Pretty sure they did.
It's a real mess, man, because if your fucking house has all those holes in it, you're going to get the shit pummeled out of you.
Mosquitoes are going to be coming in.
But it's literally like, what's so funny about it is that, you know, in the model of the thing, or the way we're modeling it right now, which is, it's not going to be like this for a while. I mean, this is like when people used to have, my grandmother would tell me her phone number was like 8 or whatever, when on St. Simon's Island in Georgia, like her phone number was something like 814 or something, or you'd pick up the phone and an operator would answer. And you'd be like, let me talk to Linda on 49 Flower Lane. Hold on. And she'd plug a thing in and hello?
Yeah.
That was what it used to be. And that's where we're at now with technology. It's just the difference is, so we're wide open, basically.
Yeah.
And what that means is, like, if you have a business, theoretically, whatever it may be, and you have a competitor, that competitor could literally manufacture fake things and swarm your ass and make you seem like a monster.
It's scary.
It's temporarily.
I mean,
scary.
even just being a public figure, you know, which I always kind of said, I was like, man, like, animation's my jam, because you can make stuff and no one really knows what you look like, and then when the show started to take off, it's still kind of that. I mean, it's still pretty great, because like I don't get recognized a ton. It happens more than I ever thought it would, but it's also because I did Ethan Klein, you know, H3H3. They're like YouTube. They're friends of mine, but they have a big YouTube channel. And he asked me. He's like, hey, we're starting a podcast. Will you be our first guest? And I'm like, absolutely, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then, like, you know, a week later, he's like, yeah, so we got the couch, and like, oh man, the set looks really great. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what set? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh yeah, no, like, it's gonna be great. I'm like, wait, is there cameras there? Oh fuck, yeah. Anyway, so I was like, oh man, but I already.
The old video podcast trap. Let me tell you, man, that's the worst when you go stumbling in. There's a fucking green screen, 18 cameras,
looking
lights
like,
everywhere.
You're looking like you just crawled out of bed. You're like, wait, what? I thought you said podcast.
No, that sucks. But I mean, not that their show sucks.
No,
but not being prepared for it is a fucking terror.
I at least was. I had enough. I mean, I found out, you know, a few weeks before. Like, I found out, but when I first said yeah, I was like, but I was just like, oh man, I've been able to kind of, you know, have this amazing best of both worlds, where it's like I've got the creative, I've got a show. It's like it's exciting, and it's like, but I also have this certain level of anonymity. Like all these amazing voice actors, like Maurice LaMarche, and I mean, even to a certain extent, like Phil Hendry, and like, I mean, all these guys, they get recognized.
Yeah.
But like, by and large, they can kind of just walk through the raindrops. They can go shopping at Ralph's. They can, you know, they don't have to even think about it. They can just be normal.
That's
you know?
right.
I can't imagine being like a really famous celebrity, like an actor, you know, and how that would affect your. For me, it would be like it would just fuck me all up. Yeah, I would just become more and more like reclusive and
paranoid, reclusive, gates within gates within gates.
I think so. I don't know.
Maybe, lonely.
I think so. I think about it. I'm like, if you know, and it'll never happen for me, but which is good, you know. But it's like, yeah, it's like, and I should clarify: anyone who has ever recognized me and come up to me, knock on fucking wood, has been just the sweetest, nicest people. I've never had an asshole ever approach me and be a dick.
You know what I hear from you, man? I hear like you want to put out there, I hope I don't sound like I'm complaining. I'm very grateful for my success, and I love the fact that people love what I'm making.
It's just interesting for me, because I'm still I hope I'm never anything other than outside of it looking into it and kind of going, that's weird. This is all weird.
You don't want to lose that stance, man.
No
because
way.
when you lose that stance, there's nothing unique
No
anymore.
fucking way.
Because you were the kid with the freckles. You were the insecure person, and now you're getting this rare access to a kind of experience that I'm sure many people on the planet are curious, to say the least, about. Like, what would that be like? And so I think there's something really beautiful about the way you're sort of reporting in from the outside, so to speak. Because it's like, we want to hear it, and because it's something you like. You think about peaks, in Western society, peaks, and whether you like it or not, you guys are on a peak. Yeah. And when we are all like, what's it like up there? And to hear, it's a little scary. And actually, I still hate myself. He still hates himself. What did he say? He hates Hillary Clinton? What's his fucking problem?
Burn his house down. Burn his house down.
Yeah, but so to me, it's like also as I'm listening to you talk, it makes me think of this thing I read, which is that to put someone on a pedestal is an aggression. So if you want to, no matter what, if you find yourself in the presence of a person, even if you have deep respect for them, but you're elevating them to a place above where you're at, or where your mom is at, or your dad is at, or your family's at, not only are you being aggressive to yourself, you're being aggressive to them, because essentially it's like a non-consensual game of make-believe, which is, because you're the person who keeps getting pedestalized, so to speak, that though you're brilliant and your mind is like outflowing beautiful things into the world, you have this sense of like, guys, I don't know why it's happening or what's happening, but I'm literally just like you. I got lucky, something happened, no difference. I got lucky, something happened, something flows out of me sometimes, and I love it, but I'm just like you. But they're like, no, you're not. I want to touch your feet. Let me worship you, please. And that is an aggression. It's non-consensual, and it's like,
it's really interesting to hear the idea of putting someone on a pedestal is a non-consensual. What did you say exactly?
It's an aggression. It's a non-consensual game of make-believe.
Make-believe. A non-consensual game of make-believe. That's fucking really interesting.
You literally find yourself in the shit position of having to be like, now you have to be like, number one, I'm not doing false modesty. I'm not doing like false humility. I'm literally telling you, like, whatever the thing is, like, you like what I made. This isn't me. Yeah. That's not me. It's a collaborative effort.
You know what I really do love about all of the success, though, is I've gotten to meet so many fucking interesting, amazing people, like that I would have never met ever. And not just like famous people and stuff, but like just people that random people that I would have never met in a million years that are just fucking amazing, or, have, I don't know, they're struggling through something, and I can, not to sound like I'm some fucking Mother Teresa, but it's like, it's nice to try to help them. I sent a friend literally four really long things from your podcast, and then a couple of appearances that you were on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Thank you, folks, for listening. Tune in next week for more podcasts of all podcasts.
Dr. Octagon, paramedic fetus of the east with priests from the church of the operating room with the strikes of force, scalpel since the Holocaust. I do indeed and greed, explore, meet the patients, back the rooms with the nurse with the voodoo curse. Holding up office lights, standing at huge heights, back and forth, left wing, swing to north, east and south with blood pouring down your mouth. I come prepared with the white suit and stethoscope, listen to your heartbeat, delete, beep, beep, beep. Your insurance is high, but my price is cheap. Look at the land. Blue flowers, growing by the purple pond. See the polka dots. Blue flowers, growing by the purple pond. Blue flowers growing about the pond. Look, it's raining yellow. Would you care to listen to any more? Thank you. Holding bags on down right from the hospital. It's a patient's worth to keep the germs off the turf. Cybernetic microscopes and metal antidotes to telescopes that magnifies eyes of a roach. Decomputed a cup of coffee planted with my hand and astral planet detached, turned on rare foggers. Cut the light on the kid and turned it bright on. Supersonic waves combined and burn his brain waves. I see the mascot of evil, he's not Knievel. Shakespeare's gone, don't even think about him. Yes, as I go into the park, I see blue flowers, it's raining green. About the pond, blue flowers, it's totally raining green and pouring. Blue flowers, I smell the bees and the birds. Blue flowers, different aspects of life.